March 10th, 1967. Captain Max Brestol throttles his Republic F-105 Thunderchief into the hostile skies over North Vietnam. Within minutes, he'll shoot down 2 enemy MiGs, becoming the first American pilot to achieve a double kill in the war. He'll also be flying the only American aircraft ever removed from combat because too many pilots were dying. This is the story of 5 fighter jets that terrified the men who flew them. Aircraft so dangerous they earned nicknames like Widowmaker, Flying Coffin, and Ensign Eliminator. Jets where 1 in 4 never came home, where a quarter of all pilots who climbed into the cockpit never climbed out. These are the top 5 most dangerous fighter jets in U.S. history. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of American aviation, and its deadliest. As the Cold War turned hot, the United States raced to build faster, deadlier aircraft. Mach 2 wasn't just a goal, it was an obsession. But speed came at a cost. Between 1950 and 1975, over 12,000 American military aircraft were destroyed in accidents. Nearly 8,500 pilots died, not in combat, but in peacetime crashes, training flights, and catastrophic mechanical failures. The jets of the Century series, the F-100, F-101, F-104, F-105, were engineering marvels. They broke every record, and they killed pilots at rates that would be unthinkable today. Narrator, why were these jets so deadly? The answer lies in a brutal equation. Experimental technology, untested designs, inadequate training, and missions these aircraft were never meant to fly. Let's begin with number 5. Number 5, the Convair F-102 Delta Dagger. In 1956, the U.S. Air Force introduced America's first supersonic, all-weather interceptor. With its revolutionary Delta wing and futuristic design, the F-102 was supposed to be the guardian of American skies, the jet that would intercept Soviet bombers before they could deliver nuclear payloads. But there was a problem, a big one. Narrator, the F-102 was supposed to fly faster than sound, but when engineers first tested it, the jet couldn't break Mach 1, not even close. Lockheed's legendary Kelly Johnson had to rescue the program by redesigning the fuselage using something called the area rule, essentially creating a wasp-waisted shape to reduce drag. It worked. The redesigned F-102A could finally reach Mach 1.2. But the fixes introduced new problems. Narrator, because the Air Force applied different modifications to different aircraft, no 2 F-102s were exactly alike. Pilots never knew which variant they were flying. Some had upgraded avionics, others didn't. Some had reinforced wings. Others were ticking time bombs. Out of 1,000 F-102s built, 259 were destroyed in accidents. 70 pilots died. That's a 26% loss rate. 1 in 4 jets lost to crashes, not combat. The F-102 served until 1976, when it was quietly retired. But for those who flew it, the Delta Dagger's legacy wasn't speed or innovation, it was fear. Number 4, the Lockheed F-104 Starfighter, the Widowmaker. Lockheed called it a missile with a man in it. The press called it something else. The jet that killed more pilots than enemy fire ever did. Designed by Kelly Johnson in the early 1950s, the F-104 was built for one purpose, pure speed. It had razor-thin wings, so sharp, ground crews had to wrap them in protective covers to avoid injury. It could reach Mach 2. It could climb faster than anything in the sky, but it was also one of the most unforgiving aircraft ever built. The Starfighter's tiny wings gave it incredible speed, but terrible low-speed handling. Stalls were deadly. Engine flameouts were common, especially in rain. And early models featured a downward-firing ejection seat, meaning if you had to eject at low altitude, you were fired straight into the ground. 21 U.S. Air Force pilots died this way before the seat was redesigned. But the real horror story unfolded in Europe. West Germany purchased over 900 F-104s, making the Luftwaffe the largest starfighter operator in the world. It was a decision paid for in blood. By 1966, 61 German F-104s had crashed, killing 35 pilots. The commander of the Luftwaffe was forced to resign. His replacement, legendary World War II ace Johannes Steinhoff, immediately grounded the fleet. Between 1960 and 1987, Germany lost 292 starfighters, a 32% attrition rate. 115 pilots died. The German public dubbed it Widowmaker, the Widowmaker. Canada's experience was even worse. They lost 110 of 238 aircraft, a staggering 46% loss rate. Belgium lost 41%, Italy lost 37%. Across all operators, over 50% of Canadian and 30% of German F-104s were destroyed in accidents. The F-104 had the highest accident rate of any Century Series fighter, 25.2 aircraft destroyed per 100,000 flight hours. In contrast, Spain, who flew just 21 F-104s with highly experienced pilots, lost none. Not a single crash in 7 years. The lesson was clear. The F-104 wasn't just dangerous. It was a killer in the hands of anyone less than an expert. Number 3, the Republic F-105 Thunderchief, the flying coffin. If the F-104 was dangerous in peacetime, the F-105 was lethal in war. The F-105 was designed for one mission: fly low, fly fast, deliver a nuclear bomb, and get out. It was the largest single-seat, single-engine fighter ever built, a 50,000-pound beast capable of carrying more bombs than a World War II B-17. But when the Vietnam War erupted, the Air Force had a problem. They needed a tactical bomber, and the F-105 was the only jet available, so they sent it into hell. From 1965 to 1968, F-105 Thunderchiefs flew 75% of all bombing missions over North Vietnam. They faced the most heavily defended airspace in history: Soviet SA-2 surface-to-air missiles, radar-guided flak, and swarms of nimble MiG fighters. The losses were catastrophic. Out of 833 F-105s built, 382 were lost in Vietnam. Nearly half the entire production run. 320 were shot down. 62 more were lost to mechanical failures and accidents. That's a 46% loss rate. If you flew the Thud over North Vietnam, you had nearly a coin flip chance of not coming home. Pilots sang grim songs about it. "Don't give me an F-105, because I love being alive." The aircraft was eventually pulled from combat, the only American jet ever removed due to high loss rates. It earned the nickname the Flying Coffin. But here's the remarkable part. Despite its losses, the F-105 was loved by those who flew it. It was tough, powerful, and could take a beating. F-4 Phantom pilots respected it, and 2 F-105 Wild Weasel pilots, Captain Merlin Dethlefsen and Major Leo Thorsness, earned the Medal of Honor. The Thunderchief didn't fail its pilots, the mission did. Number 2, the Vought F7U Cutlass, the Ensign Eliminator. Of all the jets on this list, the Cutlass was the most radical and the most terrifying. Designed in the late 1940s using German swept-wing research, the F7U was unlike anything in the sky. It had no tail. Its massive wings were almost as wide as they were long. The pilot sat 14 feet in the air on an enormous nose gear. It looked like science fiction, and it flew like a death trap. All 3 prototypes crashed during testing. Of the first 14 production aircraft, 2 were destroyed. The Navy test pilot Wally Schirra, who would later become an astronaut, called it an accident looking for a place to happen, a Widowmaker. The Cutlass was plagued by underpowered engines, an unreliable 3,000 psi hydraulic system, and a nose gear that collapsed on carrier landings. Forward visibility was so poor that pilots couldn't see the deck during approach. Landing signal officers had to talk them down. One pilot, Lieutenant Commander Paul Harwell, ejected after his engine caught fire on takeoff. He spent more time in the ejection seat than in the actual aircraft and refused to ever fly the Cutlass again. On July 14, 1955, Lieutenant Commander J. Al Khair attempted to land an F-7U aboard the USS Hancock. He was waved off as too low. Navy cameras captured what happened next. The Cutlass, nose pointing skyward, still descending, slammed into the carrier, broke apart, and exploded in a fireball. Al Khair was killed instantly. Between 1952 and 1956, 78 F-7U Cutlasses crashed. Over a quarter of them were fatal. The accident rate was so catastrophic that in 1957, Vought's own analysis confirmed it. The Cutlass had the highest accident rate of all Navy swept-wing fighters. Out of 307 built, 78 were destroyed. 25% of the fleet lost in just 4 years. 4 test pilots and 21 Navy pilots died. Naval aviators called it the gutless Cutlass, the praying mantis, and worst of all, the Ensign Eliminator. Young, inexperienced pilots didn't stand a chance. The Cutlass was withdrawn from service in 1957, after less than a decade. Today, only 5 complete airframes survive.
Number 1, the most dangerous fighter jet in U.S. history is a tie, because the deadliest jets weren't just measured in crash rates. They were measured in the missions they flew, the pilots they killed, and the legacy they left behind. The F-105 Thunderchief and the F-7U Cutlass both claimed the lives of nearly half their fleets, but they did so for different reasons. The F-105 was sent into an unwinnable war, flying missions it was never designed for. It died in combat, but it died with honor. The F-7U, on the other hand, killed pilots in peacetime. It killed them during training. It killed them during landing. It killed them because it was fundamentally flawed. If we judge danger by lethality in combat, the F-105 wins. If we judge by design failure, the F-7U is unmatched. But both earned their place in history as the jets American pilots feared most. So what changed? After the disasters of the 1950s and 60s, the U.S. military learned painful lessons. Aircraft design shifted toward reliability and survivability. Ejection seats improved. Training became more rigorous, and twin-engine fighters like the F-4 Phantom and F-15 Eagle became the standard, because if one engine failed, you still had a chance. Modern fighter jets like the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning have accident rates below 2 per 100,000 flight hours. Compare that to the F-104's 25 per 100,000 or the F-7U's catastrophic record. But the cost of progress was measured in lives. Over 8,500 American pilots died in peacetime accidents between 1950 and 1975. Their names are etched on memorials few people visit. The jets they flew, marvels of engineering and symbols of American ambition, are now museum pieces, relics of an era when speed mattered more than safety.
The Widowmaker, the Flying Coffin, the Ensign Eliminator. These weren't just nicknames, they were warnings. Today we look at these jets with a mix of awe and horror. They were beautiful, they were deadly, and they remind us that every leap forward in aviation has been paid for in blood. To the pilots who climbed into these cockpits, knowing the odds, knowing the risks, we owe more than gratitude. We owe remembrance, because they didn't just test the limits of technology, they paid the price for it. This has been the story of the 5 most dangerous fighter jets in U.S. history. May we never forget the men who flew them.